Yeah, so DocuSign Rooms is different. Hey, Kim.
Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay.
My kids are off today because of elections, so they're swimming.
Oh, fun. DocuSign by the pool.
Yeah. That's Caitlin.
Hi.
Say hi. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, go. Yeah, I was like, oh, I have to sit out here. I'm like, oh, there's a training. I'll jump on it.
All right, so we have some people still kind of floating in, so I'm gonna give it one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, long enough for me. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. So today we're doing DocuSign tips and tricks. I am recording this session and I have ones that go over pretty much the same stuff recorded in our YouTube too. So it will be there as a resource so that, you know, everything that we go over today, that you'll be able to come back to it. And then you can always come back to us and ask us questions, me or Trish, on anything that you have with DocuSign, anything that comes up. So we're gonna go through a couple things today. We're gonna go over setting up templates for DocuSign, which is gonna be so that you can have your contact information, like the office's information, the stuff on your forms that never changes, to be set as a template so you can basically just apply it to the forms and not have to type your license number so many times, or like the office's license number or the office name. Basically, all those types of fields that are always the same. We're just gonna go ahead and set those up as templates, and that's gonna save you a lot of time in the long run. So we're gonna start with that first. So for that reason, we're just gonna go straight to DocuSign in order to do the templates and kind of skip command just for 1 second. So we're gonna go to rooms.docusign.com and that'll take you straight to DocuSign Rooms. So again, it's rooms.docusign.com. And that brings you right to DocuSign Rooms to log in. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and log in. Oops. Okay. Belinda's stuck in purgatory.
I'm in rooms, but I'm not in.
You don't have to be. Yeah, these are just everyone that's, there we go. There's Belinda. Okay. So for everyone that just jumped on, we're going to rooms.docusign.com and I'm just logging in. We're starting with templates first. So you're going to go to rooms.docusign.com and go ahead and log in. And then once you get logged in, at the very top, you're gonna have a menu at the top that says Dashboard, Rooms, Inbox, My Docs. You're gonna choose My Docs. And once you get to My Docs, this gets really confusing. So I'm going to take a minute to kind of explain it because I get a lot of people that comes over here. Under My Docs, you're gonna see this forms. It's going to list all like the PAR forms in there. It's all the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors forms. Every single one of them is going to have a watermark that says sample form. This is not the way to access forms. Since we're looking at it, I'm gonna mention it because it has come up. Every single one of the ones in this My Docs form section has a watermark on it. It's really here for like, if you're trying to remember what addendum you need for something, and there's 4 different potential ones that could be the right one, and I'm trying to figure out which one, coming to My Docs and Forms is a good way to read it, to see which one I need, and then going back to my room and putting it in. But don't come here to download forms because you will get them with a watermark. Like I said, I just wanted to say it since we were looking at it. But what we're focusing on for making templates is we're gonna go to My Docs and we're gonna choose Form Templates. And this is where you can create templates. Templates are kind of like overlays for the forms. So in the DocuSign forms, if I open something up like the buyer's agency contract, at the top is all of my information and the office's information. It asks for the office's name, the office's license number, the address for the office, the phone number for the office, my name, my license number, my phone number, my email, right? All of that information at the top of the document. Creating a template is where you can take all of that information that stays the same all the time. I can create a template for it that I'm just gonna lay on top of my buyer's agency every time I add it into a room. And they actually just updated this in a way that makes it even easier to put the templates on. Now's a great time to learn because it's gonna make your life a lot easier. So what you can do, I'm gonna go ahead and just accept this one more. Okay. We're going to create a new form template. So for you guys, when you go to this screen, your screen's going to be blank if you've never made a form template before. So we're going to hit create a new one. And when you create a new one, it's basically going to pull all the forms that you have available to you that you're going to want to make a template for. So I'm going to go ahead and pull from PAR. And I'm going to do DocuSign Forms Group.
I just put some providers.
Yeah, you have to choose Realtor because this is the first time you're logging in. Yeah, so choose Realtor, and then there'll be an option for Find My NERS ID.
Yeah, I get this.
Yeah, click the little blue link before that says like Find Your NERS ID. Or look up number or something like that. Put in your last name and your email address. So it would be the email that you signed up with BCAR. So probably the KW one.
Yeah.
So put that in and it should bump back that number. All right, so in this drop down, I'm just choosing group from the top and I'm going to go ahead and do buyer side. And I'm going to pull my one form that I want. So copy that number and then go back and just paste it in. And you're going to choose Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. Perfect. Then you should see what I see. So you're going to choose for the first drop down DocuSign Forms Group. And the second drop down, choose PA Buyer Side Sale. And then you're going to get a list of documents like this. And I'm going to use buyer agency as an example. So I'm just going to check off the buyer tenant agency contract and hit use. Okay. So this is the form that you should be used to seeing when you're filling them out, and you will want it, Tony. But this is the way it's going to look like when you add your documents into your room. All we're doing at this point for the templates is only put in the information that is the same always, or the same 99% of the time. Don't put in your client's names. Don't put in dates. Because the template will overwrite whatever you write on your contract. And if you put something in here that you didn't want to be on every single contract that you ever write, you're gonna have a hard time trying to figure out where it came from. So like I said, keep it to the contact information at the top, or if your broker's fee is always the same, put the broker's fee in there. There's the one time that you take it off, just remember to delete it off. But yeah, no dates, no clients' names, no fields that change. All right, so next one down, I'm doing the buyer's agency. The company license number for PA is RB as in boy 068180. So if you have this open and you're following along, that's what it is. If you want to write it down to do it later, that's fine too. And then our company phone number is 215-860-4200. And you would put in your license number. Your license number would either be on the pocket card. You may have gotten it in an email from the state when you first got licensed, or you can find it on PALS. So under the account that you made when you first applied for your license, you can find your license number on PALS. So you're going to put your own individual license number. The only other thing that I would maybe do on the buyer agency, I put in all of the contact information for me and the brokerage, but I would not put in anything like the buyer's information or the dates of the contract. For the broker's fee, if my broker's fee is 99% of the time the same, I would put it in. Or just remember to write it in. And there's other parts of the contract that you're gonna have to write every time anyway. So it's really up to you and what you know you're gonna remember. All right. So at this point, we filled out all that we need for this template. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit save and close. Yep, and edit the template, yep. So, refresh. There it is. All right, so I have it in here twice. So here I am, PAR buyer attendant agency contract template. You can rename it. So if I hit edit, it'll bring me back to where I was filling it out. But at the very top where it says PAR buyer attendant agency contract template 1, there's a little pencil. So if I wanted to make this even shorter so that I know what it is, right? I can rename it. And save. Okay. So I have my new one, buyer agency template right here. It tells me what form it's attached to, when I made it, and how I can edit it, right? So all that is in my docs under form templates. Does everyone understand that so far? Did anyone have any questions on creating the templates? Because we're not going to sit here and do all of them at once. I'm just going to do one as an example, show you how to use it, and then you can come back and do that later. But did anyone have any questions on how to do it before we move on? All right. The only other forms that I would give, or the top forms, I guess, that I would give a recommendation to create templates for, be the buyer's agency, the agreement of sale, and your listing contract. Forms that you don't necessarily have to make a template for because DocuSign will autofill the information for you, the consumer notice. Because the consumer notice asks for your license number, but like for a buyer, your consumer notice asks for your license number and the buyer's agency also asks for your license number. Once you put both of them into one room and you apply the template to like the buyer's agency that we just created, the forms talk to each other. So since your license number is on the buyer's agency, it will go through to the consumer notice on its own because it's in the same room, right? So you don't necessarily have to make a template just for one field on a consumer notice. It should just track through automatically because you're using the buyer's agency with the template with your license number. Does that kind of make sense?
Still have to call it up as a template in here, or you don't?
No, you don't. So what I'm saying is that like on the consumer notice, it's only like 2 pages. The one page at the bottom asks for signature, name, and then for you as the agent, your license number. You could, if you don't, because right now you'd have to type your license number in there every time, but the forms talk to each other. So because I made a template for the buyer's agency with my license number in it, as soon as I put the buyer's agency and the consumer notice in the same room and apply that template, that license number is going to go to every other form that asks for it. So same thing with the agreement of sale. If I have my buyer's agency in there, put the template on it, then that license number should track through.
Will also tell you.
No, it will just overwrite it. It will overwrite it. So that's why I say with the template, only put the information that never changes because it will overwrite whatever is on the form. The template takes the precedence. Okay. So any questions on templates before we move on how to make them? Because I'll show you how to use them. All right, I'll take that as a no. So let's now show how to use it. So I just made this template for my buyer's agency. How do I use it? I'm going to go to one of my rooms. And so I'm just going to go ahead and take one of the rooms that I have that already exists. Let's see. Today, so we'll use an older one. Okay, so let's say that this is one of the rooms that I made through command for a buyer that I have. And now we're over here in DocuSign and I want to be able to apply my buyer's agency template to it. I can right click the form once it's already added in and choose apply template. And it'll give me the option of all the templates that I've made that are attached to the same form. So here's the one that I just made. I'll check it off and hit apply. Or, let's see if it shows up. They changed the way that it looks when you add your forms in. Let me go ahead and see if I can get this to show up. Okay, so let's see PA buyer section. Interesting. I'll have to look and maybe try it in a new room, but I was having it earlier. Maybe it's if I check it off. All right, so this is, I already have all the buyer docs in this room, so it won't let me do it twice, but it's now made it so that when you check off the forms that you want to bring into the room, so this is now how it looks when you hit add in DocuSign forms. It used to look a little different. This is what it looks like now. So we choose our group from the side, so it'd be PA buyer side sale, just using this as an example. We would check off the box. As soon as you check each box that you check off, for every form that has a template attached to it, you get a drop down right to the right that you can just apply the template as it goes into the room, which is awesome, in my opinion. It makes templates like way, 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 way better. So if this was my buyer agency, as soon as I go through the room and I'm saying I'm adding in my consumer notice, my buyer's agency, my agreement of sale, the affiliate business arrangement, here I am checking everything off. As I check everything off, I can go ahead and choose from the drop down to the right and just apply that template as before it even hits the room. So that when I go into the room and I go to fill out my contract, that part's already done. I don't even need to go back to it. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, all right. All right, so that's templates. Does anyone have any other questions on templates before we move on? All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and go to command. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and log in. All right, so I'm gonna go into command because I cleaned out all of my example rooms today, so fresh clean slate, and I made 2 brand new ones. So I'm pretty excited. That was getting pretty ugly. So we're gonna go ahead. I'm going to my opportunities because I have ones already made for examples. And I'm gonna take one that I made as a buyer. And we're gonna do a couple tips and tricks with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to my opportunities and I put one in as a buyer. And then they're under. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna go to documents and I'm gonna go ahead and go to this room. There we go. Okay. So I'm in my transaction room for my buyers. My buyers are Cinderella and Prince Charming, and they're buying 123 Enchanted Lane, or at least we're putting an offer in on 123 Enchanted Lane. Okay. So I already had this room started and I already put documents in there and I already sent things for signatures so that we would have something to play around with. So what I want to do, I want to take first for my buyers, I want to take the agreement of sale and I want to show you as if we're sending it for an offer. Well, like sending it for our buyers to sign, like we're putting in an offer on 123 Main Street and I'm sending the agreement of sale for my buyers to sign on, right? There's, it's page 7 and 8 that has all the inspections, like what they're waiving and what they're accepting, like what they're taking and what they're not doing. And then there's a very last page and all of them have signature boxes that are optional. And this is something that I get questions on a whole lot. So I want to do that first and then we'll get into like editing forms. So I'm going to go ahead and take this blue form 1 is the one that I can always go back to and overwrite. So I had written an offer for 123 Enchanted Lane. This is the one that I'm sending to my buyers for them to sign off on. I'm just going to put it by itself for simplicity's sake, though I know that you guys usually put a couple things at once, right? So I'm just going to check off that one for the agreement of sale. I'm going to create an envelope for it because I want to show you those pages. I'm going to hit this pen for create envelope. And when we create an envelope, you always want to give it a name and just give it a name so that you know what it is. I'm just going to say ALS. Okay. Giving your envelopes a name makes it a lot easier that if you're sending out different packets of documents kind of in the same day or a whole bunch and it's just separated at some point because I got documents at different times. When you're trying to chase things down later and try to see what form they did not sign so that you can follow back up on it, envelopes is going to be how you're finding it. So you don't really need it until you need it. So I like to make it a habit up front because otherwise you're spending tons of time weeding through all these different boxes that all say, please DocuSign. And you're trying to figure out what document you're actually trying to chase down. So always name your envelopes. Here we added in our document. I'm going to go ahead and add in our buyers as recipients. This is another one. This is what I teach when I teach DocuSign for the first time, but it's super important. Anytime, like when you're in envelopes and you hit that add recipient sign, anytime it says pre-tagged roles, always pick pre-tagged roles when it shows up. Okay, star it in your brain. It's super important. If you don't choose pre-tagged roles, you're gonna get to the next step with your forms and you're gonna have to manually add 45 different signature boxes and text boxes and the whole nine, because it's not gonna show up. Pre-tagged roles is what slaps on all of those check boxes and text boxes and signature boxes for your clients. It does the work for you. So pre-tagged roles is only gonna show up when you're using one of the forms, the editable forms that you use in DocuSign. The only time you won't see pre-tagged roles is if the only thing you put in your envelope was a PDF. The only thing was a PDF. And we're gonna use this as an example later so you can see both. That's the only time you won't see it. In that scenario, choose room participants. But anytime you hit that add recipients and it shows pre-tagged roles, always pick it. Because it's gonna be basically the easiest option. We're gonna choose pre-tagged roles. And it's gonna pop up in a pop-up to say, here's all the people that have signature boxes in every single document that you put in here. I only put one, so it's telling me there's spots for buyer 1, buyer 2, and buyer 3 to sign, and seller 1, seller 2, and seller 3 to sign. I'm only focusing on my people, right? It's not, if I'm not representing the seller, it's not my responsibility for the seller to sign. So I'm just focusing on, I want my buyers to read it and sign it, and then only after they're done signing it will I even deal with sending it to the other side, right? So just stay focused on each step as it comes up. So we're sending it to my buyers to sign this offer. I'm gonna choose my buyer 1 as Cinderella, and my buyer 2 is Prince Charming. And we're gonna add them in. Down here is what's called your signing order. So if everyone's tagged as a 1, it means they all get it at the same time. If I wanted it to be that Cinderella does everything first, and only after she's done does Prince Charming even get it, so that Prince Charming can see Cinderella's signatures, you can create that order. You would make Prince Charming 2 then. Most people don't care. Most people just want it at the same time, and they just trust that everyone's gonna sign it at some point. But in some scenarios, it is handy to have the next person in line see what the first person did. And an example is like the buyer's financial information. The second person's gonna wanna see what the first person wrote, and they're only gonna see what they wrote if you set a signing order. If not, they'll see a blank form and they'll just sign it. Or like the seller's disclosure, if you send that digitally, you might wanna do a signing order in those scenarios. When they just have to sign boxes, usually sending it at the same time is fine. The very bottom is where we write our email to the people that are getting it. So we would tell them, hi, here's the offer for 123 Enchanted Lane. Please give me a call with any questions. Here's my phone number. Thanks, Caitlin, right? We're going to go ahead and hit next. Next doesn't send anything. Next just goes to the very last step where we're able to edit anything that we need to. So it's where we're going to see all those signature boxes pop up, where we can add in any additional ones. If we needed to add strike throughs, which is something that we're going to do today too, this is where we would do it right before we send it out for signature. So it all shows up here in envelopes. Okay, I'm gonna move this now. Perfect. Okay, so now we see our document. I only put the agreement of sale in here. Here's where we see those initial boxes and signature boxes show up for our clients, okay? It will only show up if you choose pre-tag roles. If you choose room participants or email address, this thing's gonna be blank. And you're gonna have to add everything on. So only when you have those, if you choose pre-tag roles on the DocuSign forms, you'll get that option and you'll be able to pull it up. Okay, what I wanna show you, so at the bottom of each of these pages, you'll see the signature boxes for everything, right? So it should be at the bottom of every page. Where I wanna draw your attention on the agreement of sale specifically is page 7. Okay. Page 7, where you see all the inspections that they're electing or they're waiving, right? What you'll see, let's scroll up a little bit. Okay, these signature boxes. There's solid, so yellow is for Cinderella, who's my buyer 1, and blue is for Prince Charming, who's my buyer 2. See, all these are solid color. That means they're required. That means they have to sign that box, or they cannot finish signing. They have to. Down here, where it's white with a little colored outline. So we have white with a little yellow outline, a little blue outline, and it's on both sides, right? That means it's not required. That means they can just skip that whole thing because DocuSign's not telling them to do it. And if you've ever e-signed a document, DocuSign and Dot Loop are very similar, where it jumps you to every single spot you need to sign, and you will very easily skip right over a whole page like this one. Because everything you click, it just bounces you back to that required box. And most people will just go, well, I guess I didn't need to do it anyway. Like, they're really not gonna take the time unless you spend a lot of time explaining to them. My recommendation is you have that conversation ahead of time of, okay, what are we electing and what are we waiving? Like, we don't need X, Y, and Z because we just don't need it. It's not relevant. Or, I'm recommending that we, it's up to you at the end of the day, but I recommend that we do a home inspection, but you do whatever you want. Have that conversation with them ahead of time and write the contract to reflect what you guys talked about. So that way, everybody saves a lot of time. Especially now, we do not want to be on a time crunch to be putting an offer in and having to mess around with these boxes. If we could just get it right the first time, everything will be good. So what we're gonna do is basically what DocuSign's assuming by putting them on both sides and not marking as required. DocuSign's assuming that your buyer's gonna slow down, read them, and pick whichever is relevant and skip the other one. And they're not. They're either gonna get trigger happy or they're gonna just skip the whole page. So we're gonna mark the side that they are doing as required and delete off the other side.
So based on your initial conversation.
Right. So if they're like we'll say they're electing the home inspection, right? So I'm gonna make it so that this document has them sign on the side that they're electing the home inspection, and we just even delete off the option to waive it, because that's what they said that they're doing, and if I need to change it later because they changed their mind, then that's what I'll do. But what we're gonna do is you can select both of these signature boxes and we're gonna mark them as required. So you can either click on the first one and then hold down the shift key and click on the second one. See how there's a dark blue box around both of them? I'm selecting both. Now that I have both of them selected, I get these options on the right, and the one says required field. See how it now shaded them in dark? That means they cannot skip it. They have to sign that box. We're gonna take it a step further. We're gonna click on this box, hold down the shift key and click on this box, and then I'm gonna hit the delete key on my keyboard. I'm getting rid of the option. So we had the conversation, they said we're electing home inspection and we're waiving the rest, right? So we're gonna make the whole rest of these two pages reflect that. All right, so next one, they're waiving wood infestation, right? So they're waiving it. We're gonna click on this box, hold down shift and click on this box. I've now selected both. I'm gonna hit required field. Now they can't skip that one. They're gonna sign on that box. Now I'm gonna take. You can, yeah, so you can select as many as you want. And I'll go down a little. Whoops, a little further. So, okay. Yes, so if I hold down shift, so I click on this box, and let's say that they're waiving pretty much everything else on this page, every single other one on this page. So I click on this box and hold down my shift key. Yep, every single one. I can click 8, 12, 100. Yep, and so I want all these to be marked as required. So I'm gonna hit required. And now they have to sign all those. Now I'm gonna do the same for the side that we now don't need. I say take the extra step and get rid of the other side. Like I said, they'll get trigger happy. They'll slow down and go, but there's no more boxes here. They don't really understand. So we're going to click it and we're gonna hold down shift and just keep clicking the rest of the boxes. So click the first one and then start holding down shift. All right, and then we're gonna go ahead and let go of shift and then hit delete, and off they go. And then we just got one more. All right, so that's one page down. Does that make sense to everyone so far? Okay. So now this makes it so that we're not wasting time later. When we get it back and we go, hey, you signed the whole page. Well, what's going on? All right, so then we would take it one step further and we would get rid of this one too. So you can also, you can click the first one and hit shift and keep clicking until you get all of them. You can also like basically draw a box around everything that you want. So if you click a little bit above, I'm holding down my cursor, my left click, and drawing, basically scrolling to select everything in this dotted box. You see how it selects everything? So then if I just hit delete, they're gone. And I can do the same thing with this by clicking just a little bit above and dragging. Mark is required, and I actually overdid it because I don't need those last two.
So you cross the really selection.
Yeah, so I don't need these, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get rid of those. Okay, so that's all the inspections ones. On the agreement of sale, there's one more spot that they do the same thing with these optional fields. And it's on the very last page. So it's page 14. So I'm gonna go ahead and scroll to the whole bottom and skip to page 14. All right, these ones. I find it so frustrating that they don't mark this as required. Because we're usually sending it to them either all at once or they've already, like with the offer, or they've already gotten it with our consultation. Again, DocuSign's assuming that these people read these documents and go, yes, I did receive that. Check. Yes, I did receive that. Check. But they don't. And I feel comfortable marking them as required because, like I said, either you get, like with the consumer notice, they either got that at your consultation or they're getting it right now with the offer. And all the rest of them, you're usually sending it with the offer. So like the buyer's estimated cost, you're usually sending that with your offer. Deposit money notice, you're usually sending that with your offer too. And then lead paint would be the only one that would be conditionally required. Like if it's required that you need lead-based paint, you leave it on. If it's not, we're getting rid of it. So same thing, we can select a couple. So I'm just gonna click a little bit above and highlight here. And I'm gonna go ahead and mark all those as required because they're getting that with the offer or they have already received it. And then the only one, let's say that lead paint is not relevant to this one. So I'm just gonna select those and hit delete. And now they're gone. If it was, we would mark it as required. Like if it was that they needed a lead paint disclosure, we would mark it as required. Okay. Does anyone have questions on it? Anything that we just did with the agreement of sale?
So the roles
Mhm.
that we selected in the beginning, really just assign signature buyer.
Correct. They don't really know, right? They don't know the person.
You have to change this some things you have to change every time, elections or inspection and that.
Yeah.
But
Those
those
fields.
three right there, there's no way to change.
My only guess is they're doing it as some sort of legal thing. So since you're already doing it with the inspections, I would just make it a habit to do that too.
So then it doesn't.
Yeah, I would just leave it since you're always gonna have to change the inspections anyway. It's just another thing you have to do. All right, so at this point, if everything's ready to go, everything looks good with our agreement of sale, we're ready to send this thing, we would hit send and it would go off to them for signatures, right? I have one that I already put in here as an example, so I'm gonna go ahead and just go back. All right. So we're gonna say that we sent the offer to our clients. They signed it. Everything went well. Okay. So I sent my agreement of sale to my clients and they signed it. Once everyone that's involved signs every single document that you send in the envelope, you will get them back in your room and it'll look like this. So you'll have the form one, which is the editable version that you can always go back and just start completely from fresh if you need to. That's especially handy to know for the agreement of sale. Because when you create your opportunity and you create your transaction from a DocuSign, your opportunity is the same. Your opportunity is your buyer, not necessarily the property that they're settling on, right? So your buyer doesn't change. The property that they end up going under contract on sometimes does, right? Especially now, you're putting in a whole bunch of offers and just nothing's working out. Right? Sometimes you get lucky, but you can always come back and overwrite any of the ones that have that blue form next to it. So like the agreement of sale. We wrote an offer for 123 Enchanted Lane. It didn't work out. We're on to the next, right? We're on to the next one. You can click on that form one and just overwrite anything that changed, like the address, like the purchase price, like any of the deposits, right? Their name stayed the same, so you can skip that. Your name stayed the same, but a lot of the other stuff, you got to overwrite it. Okay. What you have once it gets signed is that every single time that you send a document out for signature and it gets fully signed, you get another version of it that has this little green symbol next to it, and it says signed at the end of the name. This will happen every time you send it. So
Just the one below it, not that.
this one is the form one, so it's the
Yeah.
editable version.
That's the-
Yep, so basically what DocuSign does is it splits signatures from the editable form. What we used to use was called dot loop, and dot loop would, you would fill out the form, and the signatures and the form that you fill out were all in one, all the same. And so if you made a change on that document, it would wipe the signature, and it was as if nothing ever happened. And so DocuSign doesn't do that, and I actually kind of like it, because I want to show, like, if I have to make a change and add a strike through, which we're gonna do right now, I want to show that they signed it. Right, exactly. I want to show that, you know, if on the 18th they signed the agreement of sale and on the 19th we changed the date, I want to show that they signed the bottom on the 18th, but that they signed the change on the 19th. So DocuSign allows you to do that. That's why it's split. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the signed one, which is really just flat PDF. So this signed one is completely flat. You can't edit anything. You can add a strike through and add like a text box, but that would really be for changes like changes in purchase price or changes in a date. Anything that you want to show the progress, right, the history of it. If you needed to wipe clean and start all over, that's where you're using the form one, right? So if that deal fell through and we're doing another one, right, that we didn't get that off, that offer didn't get accepted and we're writing a new one, that would be using the form one. But let's say it did, and we just have to change the settlement date. Like I put a particular settlement date on here and I just need to edit it. I'm gonna go ahead and check off the agreement of sale that was signed, and we're gonna add in a strike through and a text box and some initial boxes for it. I'm gonna take that, I'm gonna bring it into an envelope, so I'm gonna hit that pen to create envelope. Okay. Now again, this is where the envelope names kind of get in handy. So we're gonna say AOS change of settlement date, or something like that. It can be shorter, whatever makes sense to you. The envelope name really is just for you. Now here's what that example is going to come in handy, where I said when you hit add recipient and you're always, anytime you get pre-tag rolls, pick it, but when you don't, what did you pick, right? This is an example. So when the only thing in your envelope is a PDF, you're not going to get an option for pre-tag rolls because they're not there, right? Choose room participants. Room participants is going to make it a little bit shorter for you to be able to do what you need to. So we're going to choose room participants. This way I don't have to type stuff, because if I do it by email address, I have to type out their whole name and their whole email address. If I do it by room participants, the people that I have in here will show up and their email addresses will automatically pull in. So it's gonna save me a little bit of time. I'm gonna hit add selected. All right, there we go. Cinderella and Prince Charming are in here. We'd write our email at the bottom. Hey, here's the change to the document reflecting the change of settlement date. And hit next. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump to page 2. There we go. Oops, too far. Okay, settlement date. Let's say that this is the change that I need to make. This could be relevant for whatever you need to. The process will still be the same. So let's say the settlement date is changing. I want to add a strike through. So over here, teeny tiny little bar on the left. One of them says pre-fill tools. It looks like a pen. I have zero clue why they call it pre-fill tools. So you're just gonna have to trust me on this one. It looks like a pen. So we're gonna choose line. I just click it once, it'll attach to my cursor like that, right? So with this little red line. I'm gonna bring it over to where I want to start the strike through. Click down once, it'll place down the start of it. I'll bring it all the way over to where I want the end to be. And then I just click down again, and there's my strike through. I can make it longer or shorter once it's down if I need to. There's my strike through. Now I need to add in the box to say what the new date is, right? So now we're going back to our teeny tiny little menu on the left. We're gonna go back to standard fields. We're gonna choose text and drop it on our page. I'm gonna go ahead and make this a little smaller because it sits a little better when it's smaller. I'm gonna change it to read only and take off the required field. Especially because this text box is technically assigned to my buyer. If I leave it as required, it's gonna make her change it. We don't want her to change it because it will make it, you're gonna end up getting a phone call where they're gonna be like, I don't understand why it keeps telling me I need to change something in this box. So be very careful, make sure that you're paying attention when you're adding text boxes in this way. Because like I said, I'm gonna make it read only so she can't change it, but I'm gonna also take off required fields as an extra step to make sure that she won't, because it will make her if it's marked as required. Okay, now we're gonna put in our text box what the new date is, so I'll just say A1. Oops, let's try again. And then click away, and it drops another box for me. Now I need them to sign off on that change. So I'm gonna add an initial box for Cinderella first. So in my drop down, I've got both of the people involved. So I'm gonna start with Cinderella. I'm gonna hit initial, and I'm gonna drop it on the page. I can make that a teeny bit smaller. Start going in the corners. I'm gonna give it a date sign too. The date sign for her, and I'll just put it up here. Okay. Now I'm gonna drop down in the drop down on the top left, choose Prince Charming. Give his initial box, and it'll match the size, which is nice. I'm gonna give his initial box. I'm gonna actually make it a little sloppy, but I can show you how you can line them up. I'm gonna drop this down here, and I'll put his date sign just sky high up there somewhere. Okay, this is a mess. What I want is I want both of my initial boxes to be lined up. If you select both of them, I'll just do it this way. I'm gonna click the first one, hold down shift, click the next one. Okay, so it's got them both selected. Up at the top, you've got like formatting tools that will choose how you want it to align. So you can choose align left, align right, top or bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and say top for the one that I need. It's gonna line it up. I'm gonna take my date signs that look a little crazy, click one, hold down shift, click the other. And for this one, I'll just align bottom because that'll get them even out. Nice and neat. So we've got our strike through, our change, and their initials to sign off on the change. There was nothing else that I needed to do, and we're ready to roll because their signatures are at the bottom of each page for the first time. We would go ahead and hit send, and it would go off for them to initial on that change. Does anyone have questions on that? Is anyone awake on the Zoom? Hello.
Yeah.
Tell me they tuned me out.
Seems to make it pretty easy. But everything, when you make an adjustment to any of these documents, you always have to break out. Are they, so they're initialing that strike and the add?
Correct.
Right, it's not a separate sign for the strike out.
No.
Unless it's in a different part of it.
If it was in a difference, if you were striking out just the whole thing entirely, I'd probably have them initial that whole strike too. But yes, for each, I guess, section that you're changing, I mean, there's not too often that you're striking out like an entire section of something, because these forms are written to protect them, right? Okay.
Can I ask a question? This is probably maybe a painfully stupid question, but when people are following along with this, is everyone making like a test client and going through and doing this? Or like when you added the forms, obviously I just added the forms, but in terms of everything else that you're doing, like how are people following along?
So I usually recommend making a test room or a test opportunity. So in Command, and you can even make one test opportunity that you use every time.
Okay.
Right, so you can create a test opportunity to make a test room, so that way you get to use that whole process in there.
You're not expecting us to follow around.
You don't necessarily have to. So I say learn at your own pace, because sometimes and often, if you're trying to do this type of stuff with me, you're not gonna learn it. You're spending way too much time trying to find the things that I'm talking about that you're not absorbing what's being told, right? So I don't necessarily know that, like, yes, you can make a test opportunity, but you don't necessarily have to do it as I'm doing it. You could just write notes.
And do it afterwards.
And do it afterwards, right? That's usually how I teach it with like the first time, it's like, put everything away and just write it down. And then your homework is go back and try to do it, right? So it's really up to you, Belinda. Because sometimes, especially if you're working on a laptop, you can't see what I'm doing and what you're doing at the same time, right?
Yeah, that's exactly why I was asking. I'm like wondering if someone else figured out a way to solve the struggle.
I would just take notes.
Okay, thank
And
you.
this is being recorded, so that way, when you go back and try to do it later, you'll have something to follow along with.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Come on. So we're gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna go back because they have fake emails anyway, so. Okay. Okay, strike through initials. Let's do adding signature boxes onto another PDF. So I'm gonna use, we're still keeping on the line of using buyers. And I already added in a seller's disclosure from our sellers for this deal. So the sellers for 123 Enchanted Lane are Mickey and Minnie Mouse. They're a busy bunch. All right, so I already brought in the seller's disclosure. So when you're working with a buyer, right, the listing agent's gonna send you a PDF of the seller's disclosure. Sometimes they even already have it on Bright. Like, so sometimes already on the listing, they have it in the little file section on Bright. So sometimes you can just pull it yourself and bring it in here. Sometimes they'll just give it to you. Sometimes you gotta ask for it. But we're just assuming that that step's already been done, that I got the seller's disclosure from the listing agent and I've already uploaded it into my room. So with that PDF version of that seller's disclosure from the other side, I took the PDF, so I hit add and computer and uploaded it, right, from my computer, from where it was saved, downloads folder, desktop, wherever I took it from my email or from Bright. Okay, so I already did that step. So our seller's disclosure from the list side, I now need my buyers to sign it. So the sellers have already signed it. I received that signed, filled out version from the sellers, and I need my buyers to sign off on what they wrote, right? To say that they're acknowledging it. I'm going to show you a shortcut to be adding in the signature boxes on all, however many, 12 pages of the seller's disclosure. So I'm going to go ahead and check off that box. We're going to create an envelope again. Okay. Same thing, we're going to give it a name. Whoop. All right, now we're down to that thing we were talking about before. Again, with add recipient, this is another time since it's a PDF. There is no pre-tagged roles, so choose room participants. And I'm having my buyers sign it. I'm checking out both my buyers, adding them in. And then at the very bottom is where I write my email and say, hey, here's a seller disclosure. Make sure you're taking your time to read it and sign off at the bottom of each page. Right, so we're gonna hit next. And then I'm going to show you where it's already signed by the sellers and where we got to do some work to put it in for the buyers. But I'm going to show you a shortcut. Okay, so here we are. Seller signed it. Pretend the seller filled it out. It's going to take me too long to fill it out. So we're going to go ahead and our buyers are initialing off to say that they've read this, that they understand what they wrote, right? So we're going to go ahead and add in the initial. So for in our dropdown, we've got Cinderella's and Prince Charming's fields. So we're going to start with Cinderella. We're going to choose initial. Drop that on. We're going to do our date signed on here too. And then we're going to choose from the drop down, give our buyer two, do his initials, and everything's color coded in DocuSign to make this a lot easier on you. So that way you understand what you're doing when you're doing it, right? I'm going to use those alignment tools to make this a little neater. Alrighty, okay. So I've got it all formatted the way that I want on the bottom of the first page for buyer one initial, buyer two initial, date signs for both. I can select all of these fields, copy it, and just paste it on the bottom of each page as one big little group. So I'm going to select everything. So you can either do the trick where you click the first one, hold down shift and keep clicking until you've selected everything. Or you can click a little bit to the top left right above it and drag. So you draw that little dotted line box to select everything, right? So it's going to give those dark blue lines around everything you've selected. So I've got this whole bundle here. I'm going to go ahead and copy it by using the shortcut Control C on PCs, and it's Command C on Macs. Control C or Command C to copy it. In DocuSign, it copies the placement on the page too. So when I go down to the second page, right about there, I'm going to paste it. So I'm going to do Control V as in Victor. So Control V or Command V to paste it. Control V, just stamp the whole thing at the same placement. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit because it's a little too high. And what I'm going to do is deselect it, because the trick is, if you basically you copy it from the first page to sit on the second page, copy it again on the second page, and it's going to have the right placement the whole rest of the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and select this again. A little high. Just a tad, which is so annoying. But I guess they don't realize. Can't make my life easier. So I'm selecting it again on the second page. So I selected everything on the second page. I'm going to go ahead and copy it again. I'm going to scroll down to the third page. Okay. Thing to keep in mind, like I said, it copies the placement on the page. So you want to be about here, like at the very bottom of the page. You go like this, like half and half, it's going to go to the next page. You're not going to be able to find it. Or you're going to find it later and go, what? And have 4 of them down there. So go about here, like right at the edge of the next page, and we're going to hit Control V, money. So now we're going to go down to the next page, and we're going to Control V. Look at that. Look at the hours I'm saving you. So we're going to do it again, and basically just go the whole way down. And do that for every single page. So much easier than dragging every single box over. I'm just stamping Control V on every single one of those. Then at the very last page, I'm adding the signature boxes. So I'm going to choose Cinderella, give her signature box right here, her date sign, and then switch over in this top left drop down to Prince Charming, signature box, and date sign. All right, so then everything's on here. We're ready to roll. So we would just hit send, and it would go off to them for them to sign everything. Does anyone have questions on that before we move forward? No? Okay. Okay. Next, we're going to do folders and archiving. And then a quick little trip through compliance, and then we're done. All right, so I'm going to go back to documents in my room. Okay. So this question's actually been coming up a lot, because especially like we've been talking about with buyers, where you're putting in an offer, they're not getting it. You're putting in another offer, they're not getting it. You're putting in another offer and they're not getting it. You're ending up with a ton of documents all named the same thing in the same spot, and trying to figure out what belongs to what. This is where folders come in. So in your room, when you're in documents, you're going to hit actions and add folder to create your folder first. So that's your first step. So we're going to hit add folder, and we're going to name this offer 123 enchanted. And I'm going to go ahead and put, that's going to be the name of my folder. I'm going to go ahead and put all of the documents that are associated with that offer into that folder, so that way I can separate it. And if we don't get that one, we move on to the next one. It's now separated. It's going to make my life a lot easier when I have another agreement of sale that's called agreement of sale signed 3. Because it doesn't change the names on its own, you kind of have to do it yourself. So I can create a folder. So here it is. It says offer 123 Enchanted Lane. Then you'll also have one that's in every single one of your rooms. They just call it room docs. You'll also see it referred to as root folder. It's the one that just by default, as soon as you start adding documents in, they all show up in that one room docs folder. That one's always going to be there. That's kind of the default one that always shows up. You're creating extra ones on top of that to organize what's in here. So what I'm going to do is take my documents that are in room docs that are specific to that offer, and I'm going to move them. So things like the co-op, the deposit money notice, the agreement of sale. Those ones are different. If I had the estimated costs, that would be specific to that offer. Things like the consumer notice, the buyer's financial, the buyer's agency does not change offer to offer, right? Same thing with the affiliated business arrangement. That does not change offer to offer. That's just between like you, them, the office, or the financial, them disclosing what the finances are. So we're taking the ones that are specific to this offer, like the cooperating broker compensation, deposit money notice, agreement of sale, et cetera, right? So I check off everything I want to move. Once I start checking documents off, I'm going to get an option at the top. Looks like a piece of paper with an arrow. It says move. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. I'm going to choose where it goes. So where it says please select destination, you can choose folder and current room. It's going to list off all the folders in this room. Here's my brand new one, offer 123 Enchanted Lane. I'm going to hit move. Okay. So now they're split. So now those documents that I selected are in that folder for 123 Enchanted Lane. It always does this. It shows it to you for a second and then refreshes the page. Only when you move the documents. Like it only kind of gets it. Okay. So they're all going to be sitting at the top in that folder. What I can do is a couple different things. So let's say that that offer now has fallen through for whatever reason. I can just nest the folder by clicking on the text and it hides it from me, right? So that if I needed it again, I just open it back up. Don't have to do anything crazy. You can, if you just don't want to see it, you can archive documents. So if you right click them and choose archive, archive just hides it. And then you can bring them back. My recommendation, don't delete forms. Just don't do it. Only delete things that are truly a mistake. Like this was not even the right room. I put it wholly in the wrong spot. These are not even the right clients. I need to fully delete it and get it out of here. I've just had people archive things that they end up needing later and then worse stuff. Like now we have to go back to the other agent and go, oh, I'm so sorry, I deleted the seller's disclosure and I can't find it, right? I get it. Like you don't want to look at it, but yeah, like I said, archive it, just hide it. That if you happen to need it in the future, it will be there. Only delete things that are like truly a mistake.
Is it easy to get back?
Yeah, so if we archive, I'll just archive this one. Archive. So in the room, it defaults to active documents as your view. So see here at the top where it says active. So the one that I archived, it's now hiding. And so yeah, it usually defaults that. Once you change it in one, it kind of saves what the new default is. So sometimes you got to swap it around a couple times. So in that drop down, active documents, you can choose all documents or archived. So active, all, or archived. Active would be only the ones that are not archived. All would show active and archived, and archived will show you only archived. So you can always get it back, is basically the point. Delete though, can't get it back. It's gone, 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 gone. So don't do it. All right, so we have a folder. Let me go ahead and bring that one back because we're going to use it as an example. And I'm just going to right click and unarchive and it's going to bring it back. Yeah.
Is there a storage
Limit?
limit?
No, not for rooms, not for what we use. If you use e-signature like in your own account, like if you went off and made your own e-signature account, there would be, but you don't need to. You don't need to. Yeah, in rooms, no, there's no storage limits. All right, so we have folders. Archiving. Does anyone have questions on any of that? Because then I'm going to show you how folders is going to make compliance a ton easier. I'm actually going to make one more folder and then we'll do it. So I'm going to hit actions, add a folder, and I'm just going to call it buyer's docs. So I'm going to make the buyer's docs folder for the affiliated business arrangement I got signed, for the buyer's agency, for the consumer notice. Oh, because I'm looking at archives. I'm like, hello, where are my forms? Those in the archive view. All right, so let's go ahead and move those over. So I'm going to take the ones that were signed, like my consumer notice, buyer's financial, buyer's agency, and the affiliated business. All right, so now everything's separated. So I could even say, like, with all these form ones, I didn't want to, if we're smooth sailing, we're under contract, I don't need to go back and look at those. I can even nest that folder and not have to look at it, or archive all of them if I don't want to have to look at it and bring it back later if I need to. With the forms ones, you can't delete it. So like, it doesn't even give you the option, because with the ones that are labeled as form, you can't delete it. You can only add it into the room once. Because the way that DocuSign works is that you can just overwrite the form as many times as you need for whatever you need. So if you do the agreement of sale and you try to add in another agreement of sale to start over, it won't let you. You use just the one that's sitting in there, so it won't even let you delete it, because otherwise you'd be in a real pickle. So it won't even let you. So I can even nest that folder and not have to look at these if I don't want to. All right. Okay, so there's my nice neat room. Looks a lot better. I'm going to put it in for compliance. So we're going to go back to where we are in command. I'm going to go ahead and give this page a good refresh, because this is for my opportunity for my buyer. And I'm under documents, but since that's been sitting stagnant this whole time while we've made all these changes, it won't read it right away. So I'm just going to refresh that page so it can catch up to everything that we've done. All right, so once we get our documents fully executed, so the sellers have signed it, the buyers have signed it, listing agent, buyers agent, everybody signed it that needs to sign it. That's fully executed. We ideally want the fully executed forms put in within 48 to 72 hours of it getting fully executed for you to send to compliance. Honestly, more often and the sooner you can get it sent for compliance, the better, because then it gives us more time to check to make sure you didn't miss a signature box, that numbers are consistent, that we can make you aware of any changes or any documents that are just fully missing sooner. What we don't want is to get an entire file of 40 some documents 2 days before settlement, and then you be at the settlement table or after settlement and go, hey, I never got you to sign the consumer notice. That's not the best. So 48 to 72 hours after getting it fully executed. Yeah, so once, because if you, like, especially when you get to the under contract stage, sometimes you're waiting on somebody else, right? You signed it, but now you're waiting on somebody else to come and sign it. So once you get it signed by all the parties that need to, everything that needs to be on the form is on the form, everyone that needs to sign it has signed it, that's fully executed. So in our opportunity for Cinderella, our buyer, we're in documents, and we have 3 different checklists for compliance. So we have consultation, and for buyers, that's just the buyer agency and the consumer notice. It's literally telling you what you need, right? And this is where we're bringing back our signed documents. So we have consultation, we're gonna start with that. These would be the ones that I would bring when we had our consultation. So my buyer agency got that signed, so I'm gonna hit add a file. You can pull it right from DocuSign, so we're gonna choose DocuSign. Okay, here's where the folders come in handy, because it's one big old mess. If you hit select folder, I'm looking for buyer's agency, so it'd be under the buyer's docs one I made. Here's my short list of the documents that were signed. So here's my buyer's agency, the signed one. I'm gonna go ahead and sign it. When you don't make the folders, it puts them all in alphabetical order. So you'll see PAR, buyer tenant agency contract, and then right underneath of it, PAR, buyer tenant agency contract signed. Takes just honestly too much brain work to have to read all of that. If you make the folders, you're gonna make your life so much easier. If we have a buyer's agency, I'm gonna hit add a file. We're gonna hit DocuSign, pull it from DocuSign. My consumer notice was in my buyer's docs folder that I made. And here it is. We're gonna hit sign. Okay, so at that point, my consultation checklist is done. It's just those two forms. Consultation's done. I would go ahead and hit submit. Right, and yes, I want to submit it. That's gonna submit it to the market center. Carissa does our compliance, so it's gonna submit it into a queue of everyone else that needs compliance files done. So keep that in mind. That's what we say 48 to 72 hours after getting it signed, because it's not just you. It's 100 other agents that also need to get their things checked. So the sooner that you can, the better, because then you're gonna get more time to come back in a timely fashion to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe we forgot to pay, like sign X stuff, right? Okay, so we would go ahead and submit it. It would go for review. If once it gets reviewed, if everything's good, you're gonna get a green, what does it say? Not rejected. What's that for rejected? Approved, yeah. I was like, man, I'm having a brain fart. I can't figure that one out. So it'll say, yeah, green, approved. And if something's wrong, it'll say a red, rejected. And it'll give you a reason. So there will be a teeny tiny little bubble, like red bubble, that if you hover over it, it'll tell you the reason why. So it'll be something like initials missing on page 2. This number is not consistent. You checked off a box that isn't true for like what your transaction was, must have been a mistake type of thing, right? So it's going to tell you why something was rejected so that you can go back and fix it and replace it. Okay. So this often gets confusing. When we're in documents, we're in consultation. We went ahead and put in the documents just for consultation. Now we're under contract. We need to put in those documents. Do not hit this add item and start adding in every single under contract form, please. It's easier. You're going to hit under contract right on the left. So right on the left, when you hit under contract, you get your brand spanking new checklist that gives you everything you need once you're under contract, and you just match them up. So this is where you're going to see it happens all the time. People sit in this one and go, huh, I need the agreement of sale, and they add it in. Don't do it. It's going to take you twice as long, and just don't do it. So if you go to under contract, that's where you're going to see all your under contract docs. So we have our agreement of sale. We'll hit add a file, DocuSign, and that's where we can use our folder, right? And then I'll show another shortcut. So, right? So here's where agreement of sale is. I check it off, hit sign. Okay, so we can do it one by one like that. I know this one's a much longer checklist. We can do it one by one by that, like that, or you have attached multiple files at the top. So if you choose attach multiple files at the top, you can either manually drag in a bunch or pull in from DocuSign for a bunch at once. Yep, and just match them up. For every single one that you have, skip the ones you don't.
You don't do them one at a time, you just.
Yeah, but the difference is that how we were like filtering by just one folder before, you can't do that on the attach multiple files, but when you hit this, you see how it kind of says it in gray, the file folder? So it's still separated as opposed to one big giant mess. Yeah, so it at least gives some sort of break. So if we were looking for the agreement of sale, there it is. That's my signed one. And let's do the business arrangement was in there, but under buyer's thoughts. So here a little bit. Right, so there that is. I didn't do the seller's disclosure. Yeah, deposit money notice. There's my deposit money notice signed, right? Go up in there, so click that. Right, so let's say that's all we have. We hit attach. It's going to attach the relevant one. So you don't have to, if you do attach multiple files, you don't have to have every single one to be able to still use that feature. But it'll go down the list and add in like the 4 that I selected. There we go. Now, I want to make a note on this too with compliance. Consultation was clear because it was 2 documents that you usually do at the same time. Under contracts where a lot of people get a little fuzzy, because this is the one that takes a lot longer, right? You're getting documents at a lot of different stages when you're under contract. Just submit. Submit every time you get something, even if it's just one document. Upload it, hit submit. Like I said, it ends up making you look better in the long run, because if there is something that you're missing or there's something that's wrong, we want to catch it early. We don't want to catch it after settlement. It's what helps keep our E&O really low, is because we do this part, and because we're really strict on it. It helps you in the end. So just submit every time that you have something new, even if it's just one document. Don't worry about it. Just hit submit and bring things in as you get them. You will see that once you hit submit, it will be grayed out. It will stay grayed out until it gets reviewed. So that does not mean that you have to wait until the button comes back to add another document. You can still add documents as it's sitting in the queue waiting to be reviewed. Does that kind of make sense?
Document for fun.
Yeah, yes. So you can replace.
Oh, yeah.
Once you add something in, you can replace if it was like for the same line item. If it was for something else, like I submitted these 4 documents, but so I go ahead and hit submit. I'll just submit it because I'll take it out later. Okay. See how it's gray? Okay. So that means it's sitting in the queue to be reviewed. Let's say tomorrow, next week, I get around to getting, I don't know, maybe some sort of addendum or, a deposit check. That's a good example. So I get my copy of my deposit check, a week later or what have you. I go ahead and add it in. I upload the file. I assign it. You won't hit submit again because it's waiting to be reviewed. You can add in files as it's waiting to be reviewed, as that button's grayed out. And it'll just go basically with the rest of them as they're sitting in the queue waiting to be reviewed. Once it gets reviewed, that button will come back and it'll say resubmit. So basically all I'm getting at is that, like, you can still add files in as it's waiting to be reviewed. Once it gets reviewed, you'll just hit the button again in order. You have to hit the button for it to go to her. Does that kind of make sense? All right. That's all the tips and tricks I had. Or at least that's the best ones. Did anyone have any questions? Can we close out? No? All right. All right. Bye, Zoom people.